Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music. And today, wow, special day. We are not in Studio 1 at the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society. We are in Studio Barbershop, live from Riverdale, Maryland, and the Archie Edwards Blues Heritage Foundation Barbershop. And on top of that, what a special treat to be able to talk with a great friend, fabulous musician, all-around great guy who kind of got me into music in some ways. I'm going to tell you about that. Mr. Miles Spicer. Hey, Miles.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's really good sitting here talking with you, I have to say. And so I remember when I met you very distinctly, I think, because it was 20 years ago or something.
It's about that, yeah. Almost 20 years. Well, more than 20 years ago.
I think more than 20 years ago. So I kind of got the blues harmonica bug, heard about the DC Blues Society, and went to the annual picnic at Courtney
Brooks's house.
Courtney Brooks's house. And I went with the kids, and you walked up and said, "Hi, I'm Miles Spicer." And that was like that was a change moment for me.
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to walk up and say like, "Hi, I'm Ronald Reagan." I'm going to say who I was.
Yeah, well, that was good. You got that. But you there were two things that you suggested. You really actually told me I had to do. Got to come down and see the barbershop. I mean, with Archie there on a Saturday afternoon when he was cutting hair. And I did. We went down a couple times. And you also said, you got to go to Blues Week. And I signed up, Davis and Elkins College, Elkins, West Virginia, Augusta Heritage Center. And my life has never been the same.
I'm so sorry about that.
No, for the better. For the better. It's just been unbelievable. I think we have several things to talk about. But first, I just would love to know, I mean, I know that you were kind of in a way beginning seriously on guitar back in those days, but did you play instruments? Did you play music in your family? Did your parents play music? Did they play records around the house? Do you have early memories of music?
Early memories of music. I always loved music. I mean, as little kids, you bang on pots and pans. I remember my brother and I pantomiming to Beatles records. With me playing drums on the telephone book that was sitting on a chair, and my brother playing the guitar, which was actually the broom and the straw broom, and for our mom, who would just like look at us like we were the bee's knees. And
you were at the time.
I remember having a drum kit when I was a little boy, and the pieces of it disappearing because, well, I wasn't very good at it. So before you know it, I had the drum, but the cymbal was missing, or I could never find the sticks. Or
that may have been your mother, you know.
That's my dad, actually. But other than that, I was encouraged to make music in other parts of the house from where the family was. Mm-hmm. We had a piano when I was a young teen, and I played that by ear for a long time.
Did you, like a couple years, or
Yeah, 14,
no lessons.
15, no lessons. Went off to college and played pianos by ear just as something to do. And when I got home from college in the service, I moved out on my own and got a guitar at that time. I was 23 when I got my first guitar.
When you were playing drums and piano, and did you play a particular kind of music you remember? I mean,
no, I couldn't really play music. I just played things to make myself feel better, pretty much. I mean, as a little kid, you're beating and banging and thrashing around. As a bigger kid, you're playing stuff and you're trying to find melodies and work things out. And I was at the point where I could make things sound like all right. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't any training or any real direction to it. At that point, it was just self-expression.
So you got the guitar 23. Did you buy it? Were you really into it, or somebody gave you one? You just figured maybe I'd play a little bit, or?
I had moved into an apartment. I moved out on my own, so a keyboard at that point was out of the question, or piano at that point was out of the question. And my first guitar I got when, in the typical blues story, a woman left me, and she was supposed to go up. She was living in Atlanta. She was supposed to come up to see me, and I'd sent her plane fare. To her credit, she returned the plane fare, and I used that cash to buy my first guitar.
Nice. Do you remember what guitar was it? Do you still have it?
Yamaha 335.
Nice.
Still got it. Don't play it much. Her name is Stella, the guitar's name.
Did you name all your guitars?
Yeah, pretty much all the guitars get names.
And you told me earlier you got 12 now.
Yeah, I can keep all my kids straight. I don't misspeak when I talk about my kids.
So you were 23, and then how long after that did you go to Blues Week?
Let's see. I was still in Maryland. I was an undergrad when I got my guitar. I graduated in 89. Went to Blues Week in 91.
91?
91 was my first year at Blues Week.
That was pretty early on, really.
Fairly early on, but all of the originators were still there. So
Yeah.
John was there. John Cephas was there. John Jackson was there. Howard Armstrong was there. Phil Wiggins, of course. Archie, who had just passed Archie didn't pass till 98. So yeah, all those guys were still alive, and I was able to sit at their feet and get an idea of, how deep that culture goes.
Oh my God, John Jackson sitting at his feet.
Man, he was such a cool guy.
Amazing. So then how did you find out about the barbershop? Was that from people that you knew at
I was going to
Blues Week, or?
no, actually I was going to open mics around DC. And one of the open mics Archie Edwards was at, and I was playing guitar there, and I met Mike Baytop at that. Started to hang out with Mike Baytop in the latter part of the 90s, and he was starting to mentor me. And a little after that period, Archie passed away. So I got to learn from Archie, not a great deal from Archie, because he was a much more accomplished guitarist. But Mike Baytop, who had learned from Archie, sat me down and taught me the basics. The train's going through.
The train's going through by the barbershop.
That's one of the beautiful things about the barbershop. That train comes rumbling by.
Yeah.
So where I was able to really sit at Mike's feet and learn how to tame the thumb and get the alternating thumb going, and the idea of how to play in the Piedmont style. I was really fortunate to team up with Mike at that time.
And so before you met Archie and Mike, what kind of music were you playing? Were you just playing blues, not Piedmont style, or were you playing folk or I don't know what?
I'd started taking guitar lessons in 1990 from a guy named Paul Bell. Paul Bell is now the lead guitarist for the band the Nighthawks. He is a pro's pro. Everything from playing my wedding to teaching me classical music, rudiments of how to read notes, and a thorough grounding in how to play the guitar in all settings. When you sit down with a guy who's going to be your guitar teacher, he should be asking you some questions. And the main question is, when you're done taking lessons, what do you want to be able to do? Mm-hmm. When you give him your answer, he can formulate a curriculum or a path that'll get you to that goal. When he said, well, Miles, what do you want to do? Do you want to play this? Do you want to play that? I said, when I finish, I want to be able to sit in any situation and hold my own. And from there, he just gave me this broad background and how to play chords, how to accompany people, how to incorporate melody. And you could bring him a song that you wanted to learn, and he would teach you how to play that song in the broader scope of your goal is to be able to sit in with somebody and play this kind of music. when I got my first opportunity to be in a band, it wasn't in blues. I was playing in a Cajun band.
I remember that, actually.
Yeah.
Was that with Joel?
That was with Joel
Bayless.
And Jim Briley. Jim's son, Justin, and a couple other folks. But those were the main characters in the band. And I was just playing really basic chords and accompaniment rhythm for dancers. Mm-hmm. And that was the focus. And my time with Paul prepared me as well as anybody could be prepared for that kind of situation.
And then, sort of about that time, you got smitten by the alternating bass, and
it was all at the same time. Actually, I'd started going to Blues Week. I'd started playing the blues, and then Florette said, "I know a guy who needs a bass player for this Cajun band he's doing." And I said, "Well, Florette, I don't play bass." She said, "Well, you ought to meet with him anyway, because he's putting together a band." So I met with Jim, and and he needed me, and off we went. We learned like 40 songs in 30 days to play the first gig we had. And from then on, I was a rhythm guitarist in a Cajun band, as well as a blues guitarist.
Cool. That's great. So about that time all around in that time, Archie had passed. We got the barbershop started, the Archie Edwards Blues Heritage Foundation. Mm-hmm. What a time that was.
A lot of things going on in retrospect.
Oh my God, with Mr. Bones and
all those old guys.
All those old guys. It was such for first couple years, I think I went almost every weekend, it seemed like. And it was such a community. Neil
Still
Johnson
is.
went a lot, still is, yeah. I mean, incredible community. And that was one of the most important parts about it, really, not just playing music, sitting around listening to Mike Baytop and wow. So, but it was about that time that you met Risa, I guess, Risa Gibbs, at
middle to late 90s. I met her at Blues Week, and we started hanging out at the barber shop. I guess it would have been the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
And we started hanging out at the barber shop. Now Risa lives in Hampton, Virginia. She would come up for the weekend. And we would play music together, right? And we would start to learn stuff. And as the barbershop started to go out and play as the barbershop, I started to play with her under the auspices of a barbershop gig, and it turned into Jackie joining us at a barbershop gig.
Jackie Merritt,
yeah. Jackie Merritt joining us, and then we became a trio.
Yeah, well, one of the first things I remember you and Risa playing, of course you guys still play it, is Angel from Montgomery. People are all, just sort of crumpled in their tears listening to her do that. And you just had such a great vibe together. And then Jackie came in and the three of you have really, played off each other's strengths and creativity. I mean, you have a lot of songs you've written yourself. I mean, how does that transition feel? Is that one of the things you wanted to accomplish back when you were telling your guitar teacher what you wanted to do is get out there and play and entertain people and write songs?
I think there was a part of me that always wanted to be an entertainer, a musician, and I kind of fell into it. I remember when I was still dating Jennifer, the lady who would become my wife, and we would go to all kinds of concerts. I always loved going to concerts. And I was at the point where I was telling Jenny, "Oh, this guy did that. Did you see when they were doing this in there? And they did that." And my wife turns to me and she says, "Miles, I realized you're a frustrated musician." I'm not quite as frustrated. But I ran into Paul Bell a little while ago, and he said of all the people that he was giving lessons to, he was teaching at the old guitar shop downtown D.C., of all the people that he taught. I was one of the few guys who stuck with it enough to become a performing musician. And that meant a lot, still does mean a lot to me. Way back then, I think he realized that I had a particular drive as an adult learning music, where it was more than just, a little hobby to me. I really was and will be passionate about music. That's my form of self-expression.
That's a good way to describe it, talk about it. We got a few people showing up at the barbershop playing, picking a little bit.
Blues Heritage Foundation.
That's what we do here.
There's people in the background moving chairs and starting to sing and play, and that's what we do on a Saturday afternoon.
That sure is. So
that's a beautiful thing.
So now you've been playing with MSG, the Acoustic Blues Trio.
16 years.
16 years.
Yeah.
And I know that's been great, but how did you've been playing big concerts, festivals. At the Barber Shop, you play all around. You played at our house. I mean, how is that going? What have you kind of seen? What have you observed about that? How has it affected you? And whatever.
There was a time when the extra money from gigs was buying diapers and wipes. I mean, everything went to the bottom line. But the idea that I have an opportunity to do something that is my passion and be rewarded for it it's a wonderful and humbling thing. You have to realize that nobody has to pick up the phone and call you. There are any number of competent musicians around that they can get instead. And if you're not particularly easy to deal with, then they'll call somebody else. If you have an attitude or, you aren't professional in your approach, they'll call somebody else. And you have to keep that no matter how good you get. There's bigger gigs and other places to go. And your calling card is your performance. And if you have a CD, that's another one of your calling cards. And people will get an idea of what they can expect. Proof is in the pudding, I guess you could say.
Yeah, so the three of you have a great vibe together. Your performances, you really bring the audiences in. I mean, there's some performers who don't really want people singing or tapping their foot. Well, that's not you all.
No.
Oh my goodness, Risa said to me one time, I said, do you like it when people sing along? She said, I love it when people sing along. I mean, describe sort of that, the kind of vibe you like to create, how do people react? What makes them, kind of happy and enjoy the performance?
Well, as a musician, you want to reach people. That is the idea. Okay. As a musician playing for a band for dances, you want people to move. You want to physically getting them to move to your rhythm. You want them to dance. If you're playing a dance and nobody's moving around you, got a problem. Okay. You want people to connect on that level. When, as a musician in a concert with MSG, I'm looking for them to buy in, the audience, that is. We want them to clap and sing. It's a shared experience. We are not playing for you, we are playing with you.
Ah, nice. Yeah. Well, you really, you achieved that goal, because you can't not tap your foot and sing along a little bit. Particularly, you get an audience full of people who know most of your songs. It's your goal, right?
And you're playing with the hometown audience, of course, of course. But when we go to places where we have a fresh audience, we're going to select songs that are going to, connect, or attempt to connect anyways. When I was learning from Mike, and Mike taught more than just how to hold a guitar and, tame my thumb. He gave you an idea of what, as a musician, you are looking at or for from an audience. You want to start off with something that they kind of recognize, and you want to get them to buy in. Once they've bought in, then you can take them someplace. Okay. Once they've bought in to something upbeat, then you got their attention. Then you can bring in something that has a bit of a message if you wanted to. Okay. And then they'll listen to what you're saying because they're invested at that point.
It really is all about, then, to you, being with people. And do you think people get something out of this? What do they get out of this? Listening, hooting and hollering with MSG. What do you see?
I'll give you some insight into that. When you talked about naming guitars, the first guitars I got were just random kind of names for women, like Stella. And then the idea was that I wanted to name the guitars after a feeling that I wanted to impart on an audience. So I have a guitar, her name is Grace. I have another guitar, her name is Bliss. There's a guitar named Joyce, which is short for joy. There's a guitar named Jenny. My wife's name is Jennifer. But inside of that name, the guitar's name is Generosity. Okay? There's Maisie, who's short for amazing. Those are just some of the guitars. And the idea in naming guitars is the feeling that I'm trying to impart, to share with an audience.
Shared experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It just seems so powerful to me. And, part of this venture with the Planetary Gig Society, I kind of recently, just through reading and research and whatever, have the power of music is just, my appreciation of it is now is that there's not anything more powerful practically. We're vibrations. I mean, we are connected on, molecular levels. We breathe the same air. And music just, it's so elemental to who we are.
Yeah, it is. We all start listening to music as we grow up. And music has an ability to jump. And a lot of the arts has the ability to jump strata. Social strata. So the same music that, the rich kids are listening to, the poor kids are listening to. In a lot of cases, the music that the rich kids are listening to is created by the poorer kids. Mm-hmm. But it's a way to talk to people. As a musician, I've gone places that I would never have gone.
You mean places, physical places?
Physical places that I would never have gone if it wasn't for music. I just wouldn't have had that entry.
But maybe emotional and spiritual places too.
That's a whole nother conversation. Emotional and physical places. When I sit, and I'm sitting right next to Risa, and that girl moves me to tears, it's an amazing thing.
She moves me to tears too.
Oh my goodness gracious. But when we're talking about those different places, there's physical places, social places where I can go, guitar in hand, okay? And then there's emotional places that we're all transformed to. Once again, shared experiences.
Yeah, it's fabulous. So another one of the things that we're trying to kind of do through this, these podcasts and the conversation is, how can music make a difference? I mean, we're talking about how music is making a difference. I mean, I think the barbershop is making a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely is. One of the things about the barbershop is you come in here, I didn't know what you did for a living when we started hanging out at the barbershop. It's a beautiful thing that there are people who are laborers who hang out at the barbershop. We've had people who were judges who hang out at the barbershop, magazine editors, attorneys, right? All kinds of people from all kinds of walks of life. They come in here and we hang out on Saturday afternoons. And we don't worry about, don't talk about, don't really discuss what we do for a living. We're just, he's a fairly good harmonica player, or he ain't.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you don't really know what other people are doing, but they're there and they're listening or they're playing music. And Mike Baytop used to kind of talk about this. I mean, everybody starts off someplace.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I was so bad when I started playing guitar. My folks gave me a keyboard. True story. I was living in my apartment, and they bought one of those little Casio electric keyboards that you can plug in with the headphones and not disturb all my neighbors in my apartment. I had started taking guitar lessons, and they bought me a keyboard. I'm like, They won't say that they were hinting at my prowess as a guitar player at all, but that's just the funny true story. Yeah, I started playing guitar. My folks gave me a keyboard.
Well, another thing about the barbershop, and this was not about music, because I do remember a time I'd go to the barbershop with my harps, try to figure out what key the song was in, what key harp I needed, all that, how I could participate, and I wanted to play. I wanted to participate. And what I gradually realized is that was fun, and I could practice and come down. But the best part was just hanging out with the people and sitting and chatting.
There's no better way to waste a Saturday afternoon.
Oh my God.
I'm trying to tell you.
It's unbelievable, the community that pulls together.
And the beautiful thing is, this community it started around the older guys who were Archie's contemporaries, and one by one we lost them. But the community itself that had formed around them was a community that continued. And if you can imagine rings around a tree, as the tree grows, the rings expand. But they're still connected to what was the center, what was its seed.
Yeah.
And we've gone from this tiny little 501c3 that was, well, we're on our 20th year now. This year we'll celebrate our 20th anniversary. And it's a beautiful thing to have been a part of at the beginning.
Absolutely. I tell you, the world could use more barbershops. You know?
Yeah.
Like about 1 million more. In every country, all over, playing any kind of music, too, you know. This is sort of blues, acoustic, and that Piedmont style, which we both love.
Well, the cool thing about the barbershop, or the idea of the barbershop, is there are places where musicians will gather. Okay? They aren't barbershops per se, but there are places, there are living rooms, there are clubs where people get together, but maybe not with the same kind of foundation that we have and history. And the thing about these other places where musicians gather is that they aren't as permanent as we've been fortunate enough to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anytime you get a couple of musicians together and time to kill,
it's fun. So
yeah.
another thing I wanted to ask about. So you've written a number of songs with your partner in crime, David Byrd, and maybe some on your own. How does that? Could you just talk a little bit about the process? Kind of what triggers? Where does it come from? What moves you to write? What are you trying to achieve? Or are you not really trying to achieve anything? I mean, you MSG and Jackie's songs, your songs, very creative, very sort of cutting edge in some ways. How is that process? How does that feel now?
Wow. Each song is its different animal, and it's going to have its own story. When David and Bird and I are writing, sometimes we'll start with an idea that we want to tell in a story form through music. Sometimes there'll be a musical part that we try to wed words to, or there'll be words and an idea that we try to wed music to. And with David, sometimes he has the germ of the idea, or I have the germ of the idea. Sometimes we mash our germs together and see what we get. But the idea is not all of the songs are going to be stuff that ends up in performance. Some songs end up being exercises in songwriting. Mm-hmm. And stuff we'll finish and put down and never really go back to. Sometimes we'll tease at it until we like it. And then we have to, run it by Risa and Jackie to see if it's going to be part of the band's repertoire. And sometimes, if there's stuff that we think is pretty good that for other reasons don't make the repertoire of the band, we're okay with that.
Yeah.
But each song is...
Where's it come from?
Oh, different places. Different places. One time resolution came from, we heard this lady giving this guy the absolute blues. She was going upside this one guy and then down the other. And he wasn't saying it. He wasn't getting a word in. And that's where the first line kind of comes in. I'm not going to tell you my side of the story. Your mind's already made up.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
We started off talking about, you really made an impact in my life and kind of got me into this, and here we are now and just enjoying it so much. And you've always been a very, supportive and generous person. Do you have other thoughts about, it's kind of this, music, the power of music, what you see, what you'd like, maybe what you see music for your son in years, or other people, what the lessons you can learn, and how we can kind of help use music or tap into music to get some good stuff going.
Well, if nothing else, music teaches people how to play well with others and how to cooperate for a common goal. The common goal, of course, is to sound good. You have the goal, which is a sound that you're trying to achieve, and you have the tools, which are instruments and your voices that you use to achieve that goal. When applied to just about any situation, a lot of things apply. There has to be some compromise, some give and take. A lot of times there needs to be a leader and people who are willing to allow someone to lead in the direction that the whole group wants to go. But it teaches people that, hey, you want to be good, yeah, you got to shut up and listen sometimes.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to, willing to do the work to achieve it, to get good.
Sort of find your role.
Find your role in the community.
Learn the best way that you can help out for the group goal.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty powerful lesson. All right, well, they're cranking up here at the barbershop. I want to tell you, Miles, thanks so much for making the time.
Oh man, there's so much we could say, Jeff.
Oh my God, I know. It's some good 20 years we've had. Hopefully we got some more.
I ain't going nowhere. You know that. Anytime you call me, I'm coming. It may take a minute.
All right. Well, I just want to say thanks very much to Miles Spicer, and we'll be talking more soon, I hope.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.